Hello everyone, this is part 59 of What If Naruto and Hinata trained together and a spark happened, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. The air reverberated from the speed and power of the bowstring, as it returned to its resting position. The arrow crossed the distance between archer and target in only slightly less time than it took the noise of its launching to cover the same span. Between Sakura's strength and the bow created across 2 generations of Uzumakis, the projectile would have had enough force to punch through the reinforced walls of a Kumogakure residence, and still bury itself in the rocky ground or cobblestone street up to its fletching. The Leaf Jonin had waited until Kohaku had dispatched the last of the Shizokus. She did not want to risk one of the masked warriors alerting their comrades of their general's defeat and capture. Though she and Nitsuki could probably eliminate Guki's foot soldiers before they could announce the ambush, it was not worth the risk. Kohaku was already on edge, believing without reservation that the members of Kakashi's team were in the Cloud Village. She had been enhancing her senses to help her keep track of her men, but even after they had all been sent to their marshalling points, she maintained the genjutsu. As a result, she heard the bow creak as Sakura released the missile. Tracking the hum of the string, she hopped backwards, expelling unformed chakra to speed her evasion and to try to deflect or at least slow the arrow. Thanks to her actions, she was able to avoid having her knee destroyed as Sakura intended, but her efforts to avoid the projectile backfired. Without conscious thought, the Jinchuriki called up her 3 tails cloak and vanished. Sakura immediately nocked another arrow, focusing her chakra as she hastily pulled it back halfway. The partial draw was much faster, if similarly weaker, and she fired again before her first arrow had fully embedded itself in the street. Ninja art, Shadow Arrow Jutsu, she announced, still targeting on the spot where Kohaku had been. The real projectile dug into the paving stones, while its chakra sisters shattered. None of them appeared to hit the 6-tail chameleon's host, despite the wide area of the attack. Nitsuki leaned over the edge of the roof, trying to get a better look at the area below them. The sand kunoiki drew back less than a heartbeat later, shouting, "There is a spot of B at the base of this building." She is. The conclusion of her statement was disrupted as an invisible knee collided with her jaw, throwing Nitsuki onto her back. Sakura fired at where the attack seemed to have originated, but again hit nothing. Gaara's bodyguard recovered. Sakura felt something moving towards her, and tried to dodge, but Kohaku's punch still grazed her left shoulder, numbing her arm. The medic swung her bow like a club, hoping to connect before the Jinchuriki escaped her range, but the weapon whistled through the air without any resistance. Another unseen limb struck Nitsuki's right rear quadrant. The sand soldier rolled with the momentum of the strike, redirecting it slightly so she ended up perilously close to the edge of the building, instead of vaulting off. Sakura charged forward and grabbed the bodyguard's arm, and yanking her back. Their eyes met, and instead of setting her down, the Leaf powerhouse tossed her ally back to the middle of the platform. Nitsuki modulated her flight, spinning horizontally, her leg extended to keep Kohaku from getting too close. Back to back, Sakura suggested, reversing the weapon summoning, sending her bow and quiver back to their stand in her room. Instead she took out a scroll and withdrew her battle axe. Nitsuki nodded and both women began to move tentatively closer. The older woman's hands twitched in apparent anxiety, and her eyes darted around, searching for any sign of the invisible woman. Just before she reached Sakura, a broad kick struck her midriff, knocking her aside. However, a heartbeat later, a howl of surprised pain filled the air around them. What was that? Kohaku's voice demanded, her teeth chattering. As Hinata had described of her fight with Guki's wife, they could not track her voice, as it seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. "My leg is half frozen," the grass rogue complained. "Frostbite armor," Nitsuki grinned as she rose, clutching her stomach. Sakura hurried over to her comrade, counting on Kohaku's announced impairment to keep her from interfering long enough for the medic to counteract the worst of the Sand Jonin's hurts. A simple Hyoten technique, Gaara's bodyguard continued as the Leaf Ninja, one that easily countered with ranged or weapons attacks. But according to our information, your illusion has a limited range, so you can't use those sorts of moves without being discovered. Not that there are not other ways of finding your location. Oh, Kohaku sounded genuinely curious, such as Fuyuten, Sand Screen Jutsu, the ice user signed after Sakura finished the field treatments. Dust rose from the rooftop and from the street below, swirling around them. The cloud of sand was not thick enough to impede their vision or to cause any significant damage, but it stung and created a definite haze. Unfortunately, there were no empty, human-shaped areas visible within the storm. That won't work, Sakura told Nitsuki. Hinata tried, but Kohaku's power compensates for this sort of thing. So I read. The Sand Kunoiki nodded. However, Hinata-san's methods were more mundane. I thought a jutsu designed specifically to detect cloaked or hidden individuals might be worth attempting. Sakura felt a heel drive into the back of her left knee, trying to dislocate the joint. She dropped forward to minimize the damage, and took an elbow to the back of the head for her efforts. Nitsuki spun, her cold-wrapped fists lashing out randomly in the area around the younger woman, hoping to score a lucky hit or at least drive the Jinchuriki back. As she did, the Sand Jonin let her concentration lapse, and the Dust Devil petered out. Are you alright, Sakura? Nitsuki emitted the honorific as a matter of expediency. The younger woman nodded as she returned to upright. She did more to my knee than to my head, Haruno said. Compared to getting flicked or cuffed in the back of the skull by Lady Tsunade, that was nothing. Her eyes drifted out of focus as she said it, giving lie to the statement. Nevertheless, Gaara's guard nodded her agreement and turned her focus back outwards as the healer began to work subtly on the injuries. Hold very still, the 30-year-old snow user advised, signing again. Sakura complied, keeping her back close to Nitsuki's and holding her axe in front of her body like a shield. Hyoten, skating ring jutsu, the sand ninja intoned, and a layer of slick, polished ice spread out from under her feet. Sakura felt herself lifted a few millimeters as the sheet pushed her up as it expanded across the roof. Don't move, Nitsuki instructed her younger ally again. This technique is very slippery and will naturally repel any attempts to stick to it with chakra. Kohaku should not be able to move as quickly or as accurately now. Which means she should not be able to escape unharmed if she strikes us. As she spoke, the Sand Jonin subtly shifted her left hand further back and began to tap a quiet rhythm on Sakura's right hip. The Leaf Jonin drove her axe into the ice for support, cracking both the ice and the rook tiles underneath. As the medic braced herself, Nitsuki began signing again. That appears to be a Fuyuten technique you are forming. Kohaku's flat tones flowed all around him again, hardly unexpected from a land of air shinobi and a Hyoten master. Perhaps a wide area attack that will knock me off this building while the ice is slowing me down and preventing me from securing a grip. In that case, what's to prevent me from simply escaping? Only your pride, Tsunade's apprentice answered. Our files on the grass ninjas might be limited, but Guki isn't the type to run from a possible turnover, especially when he has the upper hand. And I can't imagine he would marry someone that would do that, either. Then I guess I'll just have to stop that jutsu, the Jinchuriki conceded with a hint of bemused defeat. Then, as she finished speaking, a new sound rang out, like the shattering of cheap glass. Both visible kunoiki spun to look at the source. There, Nitsuki barked, and Sakura incanted, weapon summoning jutsu. The medic released her melee weapon and was drawing her chakra-bonded bow even as it appeared. Kohaku recognized that the clamor had originated from her position, and that both were looking in her general direction, but lower, and her eyes flashed to her feet. Cracks spread out in the ice from around the leg she had moved. And though her three tails cloak naturally disguised where her foot had landed and the area immediately around it, the range was too limited to fully conceal her, instead resulting in what looked like a large, unbroken footprint in the midst of a fractured area of the rink. Realizing her position had been compromised, the grass renegade took off, the pattern of her footfalls heading straight towards her opponents. Sakura fired, and for an instant the missile vanished, only to reappear, Kohaku's bee painting the arrowhead red. The medical ninja started to pull back a second arrow, but the invisible kunoiki was faster than she expected. Before she could ready the projectile, a knife hand hit a pressure point in her neck, and a fist collided with her temple. Her vision blurred as she fell, struggling not to pass out. Before everything went dark, she saw a flash of steel as the blades of a dasho appeared out of nowhere, and then heard a piercing squeal of electronic protest. Hyoten, Ice Kunai Jutsu, Sakura heard Nitsuki proclaim as she pulled the scattered fragments of her mind back together. She lifted her head, and saw the two halves of the sand ninja's bisected radio lying next to her. The next returning thought was that the ice under her was gone. Hyoten, absorbing snowman, the Kazekige's bodyguard intoned. Sakura looked up, and for a moment thought she was seeing double. The first Nitsuki's frozen daggers disappeared into the three, stacked spheres of snow created by the second Nitsuki. Then the Nitsuki on her left unleashed a wind jutsu, blowing apart the snowman. The Nitsuki who had been on defense gestured, turning the scattering flakes into a number of globes of liquid water, and sent them out to pummel her identical foe. That shinobi managed to narrowly dodge the attack and started to form her fingers into animal symbols again. What's going on? Sakura mumbled loudly, her awareness still not fully recovered. However, the medical training Tsunade had forced into her on a near instinctual level made note of the identical. Sakura-san, both Nitsukis stopped their attacks and turned to face the younger woman. The last pieces of her intellect began to fall into place, and she clasped her hands together. Release, Sakura proclaimed, staring hard at the two versions of the Sand Jonin. I tried that already, the Nitsuki on her right said sadly. I tried that, the left version of the bodyguard interjected firmly, but both Conan and the Grass Ninja's reports said she is a shapeshifter, right? She waited until you couldn't see, and then she turned into me. And she destroyed my radio and gave me injuries like hers. So you wouldn't be to tell the difference, both of the doppelgangers said in unison. All right, the pink-haired teen felt her headache worsening, and blandly asked, in that case how did we first meet, Nitsuki-san? Technically, we crossed paths when our two villages liberated the Sound Village from Kabuto's control. But we weren't formally introduced, and we never actually spoke on that mission. Those happened during the mission to rescue Naruto from the Akatsuki. When you were treating people after everything was finished. You approached me to see if I was injured. Quote. I told you I was fine, and asked you to check on the Kazekige. And then we talked a few times on the way back, before you returned to the Leaf Village and the rest of your team went with us. To attend Kankuro Dono's funeral. We talked about Naruto-san, Gaara-sama, and Kankuro Dono. The duplicated women trailed off, staring at each other suspiciously. How do you know all that? The left Nitsuki asked. Genjutsu. Or some sort of mind reading. The other one counted cautiously. It's probably just normal reading. Sakura sighed. Ayameko-san told us that Kohaku has a perfect eidetic memory, it's part of why she can mimic people so well. The mole in the Leaf Village must have given Guki my reports. The younger woman looked chagrined. Lady Tsunade keeps telling me I don't need to be so detailed. The three women glanced back and forth between one another, though the two Nitsukis focused primarily on one another. I've already seen that you can both use Hyoten techniques, the pink-haired teen mused out loud. Can you both use the frostbite armor and skating ring jutsus? Yes, both answered in unison. But if she were lying, she might be able to fake it with what she's seen, the left-hand copy decided uncomfortably. More importantly, could you tell if the techniques were real, without putting yourself in danger, Sakura-san? The right version asked. I guess I just don't know enough about Nitsuki-san, Sakura thought to herself. Then she had a bad idea, but decided to use it as a test. So should I just take you both out, then? Sakura asked sarcastically. That ploy never works. You wouldn't know me well enough to know if I would say that. Besides, if you shot me first, you'd have to fight her alone. Or if you did manage to disable us both, you would just have to waste time and chakra to heal me afterward. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to finish my part of our current mission. Okay, then, speaking of the mission. Sakura grinned. Both Nitsukis raised their hands to forestall her, but only the Sand Jonin on the Leaf Kunoiki's right spoke, stating, don't. We can't be sure how much Guki has learned about our mission, so it might not work, the other one continued. And even if you asked about something Kohaku didn't know, then she would know about it. And if she escaped, that would mean Guki and Pain would learn about it as well. What about the message you just gave me? Sakura asked. The one I tapped on your leg. She must know the basic gist by now. And that language is not very specific. Since she obviously saw it, if I gave you the exact message, she might be able to decipher the code. Why did she mimic Nitsuki, and not me? The unique woman demanded of the mirrored kunoiki. Your bow. She can't copy that. Your strength. She can't copy that. Sakura sighed, and put her free hand to her face. The two answers, given at the same time, were both reasonable, and didn't help her. So, what are we supposed to do here? She queried angrily. I've got no way to figure out which one is Kohaku and which one is Nitsuki. Do nothing. Let us fight. If the real me wins, we are fine. Otherwise, you should be able to finish Kohaku in her weakened state. Okay. Sakura sounded dubious, but inside she was thankful to have a moment to rest her doubly taxed brain. She took a few steps back, watching both Nitsukis carefully for anything that might give away which one was the fake. She stowed her axe, and then settled into a casual stance with her bow still half drawn. Hyoten, razor icicles, both of the supposed sand kunoiki proclaimed at the same time. Rasengan. Naruto shouted, charging Nagato's persona. Uzumaki's right arm was extended, and the spiraling sphere in his palm noticeably larger than usual. Chidori, Kakashi's voice was more subdued as he surrounded his hand with lightning chakra. His Sharingan was already active. Hitaki had uncovered his transplanted eye even as Hinata had vanished around a curve in the street. Despite the more reserved start, the Leaf Jonin raced forward faster than his apprentice. Shinra Tensei, Pain announced when Kakashi's fingers were only inches from his chest. The gravity jutsu formed a sphere around Yahiko's body, and threw Kakashi away from its creator. The orb touched Naruto, and for an instant it appeared the teen would be similarly dislodged. Instead, a shadow clone was destroyed by the pressure, and the turbulent ball of chakra exploded. The Deva path was forced to squint as he looked around for Uzumaki. Before he could find the teen, Naruto announced his presence. Shadow Clone Jutsu, the blonde Tokujo's voice emerged from the fissure Pain had created in the street, and two duplicates caught Kakashi, while the original +6 facsimiles darted up out of the gap, closing on the Deva path from all directions. Off guard from the sudden escalation, and his gravity power recharging, Nagato readied his fragment to engage the copies in melee combat, at least from a few heartbeats. Unexpectedly, 4 of the clones slid feet first towards him, surrounding him and passing under his planned guard level. "Na!" The 2 clones on his side shouted together as their feet hit Yahiko's ribs, knocking him upwards. "Ru!" The Uzumaki behind him exclaimed as he literally kicked Pain's ass, pushing the Rinnegan user higher. 2. The 4th diving copy's kick hit the bottoms of Guki's apprentice's feet, propelling him rapidly skyward. The 5th duplicate kneeled and cupped his hands to give the 6th a boost as he jumped after Yahiko. "Azu!" Clone 6 yelled as his fist hit Pain's jaw, rocketing him above the roof of the tallest building around them. The real Naruto also received a lift from the 5th clone, and then landed on the back of the 6th briefly, using him as a launchpad to pass Pain. Maki Barrage. Naruto roared as he brought his heel down on Yahiko's skull, rocketing the Shozaku's general back towards the ground. Naruto's clones exploded, and he watched Pain plummet hopefully. An instant before he hit the street, another ball of gravity formed around the Deva path, dimpling the hard-packed dirt as he instantly decelerated. Still floating, he rotated slowly back into the upright position, and then touched down gently. Naruto drew Kitsune as he dropped more normally, angling the staff blade at Pain's neck. The Rinnegan user noticed him, and rather than allow the Shinra Tensei bubble to dissipate, he directed the energy at the younger man, tossing him towards the clouds like a rag doll. Yahiko's face then creased with a frown as he reached to rub the bump forming on the back of his head. "It is unfortunate my Naraka path is indisposed," he noted, "but I suppose the destruction of the Konohagakure is more important than my transitory aches." "What does that mean?" Naruto barked, pointing Kitsune at his foe as he landed heavily on the wall of a pharmacy. Guki-sensei dispatched my Naraka and human paths, along with an elite Shozaku unit, to assassinate Tsunade-sama. However, thanks to Homura Dono, we have acquired certain additional forces, and are preparing to lay siege to the leaf. "Ignore him, Naruto," Kakashi instructed darkly, "he's just trying to distract you." And even if what he is saying is true, Lady Tsunade was expecting Guki to try something like this. Of course, the copy ninja's voice grew lighter, as he turned back to Pain. "The real reason you told us that was to delay us long enough for your gravity powers to recharge. Or did you think we hadn't noticed you needed a break between strikes? You think that matters? Yahiko's enthusiasm and speech briefly overtook Nagato's control. Tell you what, I'll go without using Shinra Tensei, Bansho Tenon, or any of their variants for 5 minutes. And we'll see if you two do any better. Sure, why not? Kakashi refused to be riled. Fuyuten, Cyclone Spike's barrage. Naruto indicated his acceptance by sending dozens of drilling tornadoes down in cloud that covered a larger area than just Pain's body. Fuyuten, Gale Curtain, the Deva Path proclaimed passively, creating a pane of translucent wind that absorbed Naruto's air chakra before fading away. Doton, Stone Spear's Jutsu, the copy ninja altered the stone of the plateau into sharpened pikes, stabbing up at Pain. Doton, Epicenter Jutsu, Yahiko intoned, stomping his foot. Kakashi's technique shattered as the ground around Nagato's fragment bucked and shook. The Leaf Jonin remained on his feet, but his protege was dislodged from his vertical perch. As he fell, Naruto summoned 2 copies, who started signing without care of their impending impact. The real Uzumaki grabbed a windowsill and flipped back up to stand on the side of the building again. Raiten, Spark Darts, the first clone finished moments before he hit the ground. Kaiten, Fire Trace, the second duplicate timed his jutsu more carefully, pressing his right hand to the street to unleash the 2 tracking flames, even as the rest of his fragile body crashed down and exploded in a puff of smoke. The fire and lightning attacks flashed towards Pain, who regarded him impassively. Raiten, Cloud's Breath Jutsu, Yahiko indicated, Ram, before unleashed a dozen thin cords of electricity on Naruto. The massive attack broke apart the spark darts, and cascaded around the blonde youth. He blocked as best he could with his shock-resistant weapon, but was still struck multiple times. His adherence to the apothecary failed again, and he dropped the rest of the way to the road, his uniform trailing smoke. The former Jinchuriki landed with a dull thud. Kaiten, Tide of Fire Jutsu, the Deva Path continued after flashing the dragon sign. Orange flames poured off of him, extinguishing Naruto's technique and flowing towards Kakashi like a river broken free of its floodgates. Suten, Water Dragon Jutsu, the copy ninja shouted, every drop of free liquid his energy could grasp into the advancing inferno. For an instant it appeared the wet wyvern would lose, but then Pain's ninja art shattered, and the slightly smaller Drake flew at the Rinnegan use's chest. Suten, River Tiger, the Deva Path incanted. The mythologically opposed beasts struck one another and exploded, drenching all 3 shinobi and the buildings around them. Cute, Naruto growled as he dragged himself to his feet, his injuries already visibly fading, countering all our attacks with jutsus of the same element. The Rinnegan affords me affinity to the 5 primary chakra elements and the 5 simple hybrid elements, Yahiko's voice explained without boasting, and I know all the jutsus that any of my paths knew in their first lives. That's why I don't need my Shinra Tensei to defeat the 2 of you. Ninjutsu isn't the only way to fight, the teen roared, leaping horizontally with Kitsune held ready. The staff blade glinted out parallel to the ground, aimed for the base of Pain's ribcage. Yahiko pushed the tubular weapon lower and stepped back the rest of the way out of Kitsune's path. Uzumaki released the staff blade with his left hand, and his fist continued forward, hitting Pain's jaw. The blow pushed the Deva Path back into the trajectory of the handful of shurikens Kakashi had unleashed. Wind Screen, Nagato's alternate incanted without signing, conjuring a quick wall of air chakra that was still enough to deflect the throwing stars. They should have known that I can use any chakra element not dependent on another Kekkei Genkai, the spirit of the Deva realm, and Nagato thought in unison, Conan would have told him about my bloodline. Why goad me into using all 5 primary elements? Unless they did not believe her. Both Yahiko and Nagato's souls felt spikes of anger at the thought that the beloved former teammate might have doubted by the Leaf Ninjas, even after everything she went through, betraying their teacher and leader. Were they just trying to confirm it for themselves? The original Rinnegan user considered alone. Then a light bulb went off in his head. Why did I counter with the same elements? Pain demanded aloud. I could have dodged or blocked more efficiently using other elements. Are you using your Sharingan on me, Kakashi Hatake? Kaiten, Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Kakashi did not answer as he spit dozens of small spheres of flame at the Deva Path. But the corners of his mouth turned upwards under his mask. Shadow Kunai Jutsu, Pain created a mesh of chakra daggers to defeat the copied Uchiha clan technique. At the same time, Pain stretched forward to launch a punch at the retreating Naruto's midsection. The former Jinchuriki blocked the strike, and thrust his still disengaged left palm at Yahiko's nose. Guki's apprentice dove under the attack, coming up behind Uzumaki. The younger man spun around to face Pain before he could capitalize. Did you also make me want to stop using my Shinra Tensei? The Deva Path demanded. You have worked with Madara enough know that the Sharingan can't make you do anything you don't want to. The silver-haired Jonin shook his head, especially not at this level. It can just give you a little push. You offered to give up your gravity moves on your own. I just took the chance test out your limits. So he was confirming that I could use all the elements. Pain considered Kakashi's words carefully, but that's not all. He wanted to know if I could summon jutsu fast enough and powerful enough neutralize their attacks with the same element. Kakashi launched his own spark darts at Pain, and Nagato forced himself to craft an earth wall to stop both the electricity and Naruto's sidekick. No, it's more. He realized as Uzumaki broke through the granite with Kitsune's green chakra blade, he's trying to make me waste chakra. His multi-ringed eyes shift back to Naruto. Even with my unique abilities I cannot hope to outlast Uzumaki's chakra supply, the Deva Path admitted to himself. Only a Bayu Jinchuriki can hope to do that, and Kohaku Dono is the only one left hosting a tailed beast. Naruto swung again, and Pain's distraction hindered his evasion. He reflexively sent a tiny pulse of earth chakra into his hand, to knock aside the next S from the blonde teen without getting S again. Pain kicked up at the Tokujo's passing elbow. A clone appeared beside Naruto, pulling him out of the way, and then instantly exploded. Yahiko's eye widened, and he flipped sideways, his other heel following Uzumaki while his body drifted over Kakashi's latest set of thrown kunai. So you have progressed to the point where you can form a shadow clone without hand signs or an incantation. The Deva Path sounded genuinely impressed. Just one though, and they're less stable than usual. Naruto managed to sound smug even as he stated the weaknesses. He moved to intercept Pain's kick with Kitsune, and the Rinnegan user grabbed the ground with his hands and hauled himself back to avoid losing a foot. 298, 299, 300, a portion of Pain's mind finished counting. Then he grinned as he returned to a standing position, facing both Leaf Ninjas. Time's up, he announced, before adding, Bansho Tenon. He made a grasping gesture at Kakashi with his hand, and swung his arm harshly towards Naruto. The copy ninja was yanked towards his apprentice at high speed. Without time to dodge, and not wanting to let his teacher enter a building again, Uzumaki dropped his staff blade, the energy blade instantly collapsing. He raised his hands as if to catch his mentor. However, as Kakashi reached him, the former Jinchuriki was shifting his feet, not planting them. He grabbed Hitaki's arms, but instead of stopping his teacher, Naruto turned into a perfect shoulder throw, redirecting Kakashi's momentum towards Pain and adding additional speed in the process. The two opposed ninjas faced each other dumbfounded as they approached collision at incredible speed. Naruto, what the? Kakashi howled as he tumbled uncontrollably towards the Deva Path. Hell is he thinking? Yahiko muttered as he braced himself. He might have been able to evade the human missile, but chose to surround his right hand with a blade of blended fire and lightning chakra instead. You thought this would help you in some way? Pain said, for the first time letting a hint of derision spill into his voice. I would have expected better from a fellow pupil of Jiraiya-sensei. He brought his hand forward, preparing to disintegrate the Leaf Jonin. Only then did he notice Kakashi's eyes had shifted from dismay to amusement. 2 feet away from Guki's general, a cloud of white chakra smoke surrounded Kakashi. Clone. Pain thought, until the table spun out of the explosion. It had a heavy granite top, and a broad, wrought iron base. The Deva Path vaguely recognized it from one of the patios overlooking the street. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Kakashi appear on said balcony, waving his hand once, his massive grin obvious despite the mask that always covered his mouth. Substitution, Pain hissed. With no other options, he jabbed his plasma-wrapped hand into the heavy furniture. The high-energy chakra was less effective on metal and stone, but he still cleaved through the table without any hesitation. Though he was spared being crushed, chips of the shattered rock and drops of the molten iron pelted him as the majority of the table sailed past. Cute, but merely an inconven. Yahiko tried to boast. But the instant the halves of the table cleared his vision, he realized Uzumaki was only a foot behind it, Kitsune already swinging down. They have that level of teamwork? Pain asked himself in amazement. No talking, no sign language. Naruto throws Kakashi at me like an idiot. Kakashi substitutes for something that will obscure my vision despite being highly disoriented, and Naruto uses the distraction to close the gap on me for a K blow. It is possible Kakashi instructed Naruto to use various elemental jutsus without me noticing. I knew they were strong, but I still managed to underestimate them. The timing required from the multi-stage feint saved the Deva path from instant death. Between summoning his dropped weapon, and sprinting toward Pain with chakra-boosted speed, both in the heartbeat after the table appeared, Naruto did not have time or focus left to generate one of Kitsune's specialized blades. Instead, the raw, reinforced steel of the staff blade S into Pain's right shoulder, the full force of the Tokujo's weight and chakra-supplemented muscles behind it. Yahiko's clavicle and humerus were not so much broken as shattered, and the rest of the force cracked his top rib and shoulder blade and drove him to his knees. He did not stay that way for long, as Naruto's foot collided with his left ear, sending him tumbling away. Pain did not so much stand as push himself back to his feet with a weak Shinra Tensei. Despite the defiant act, Nagato was filled with dread as Kakashi hopped down and walked over to stand by his student. Yahiko's eyes were narrowed and fluttered in agony, but he still stared down the two-leaf shinobi. I can summon my Naraka path, he told himself. It might hurt the attack on the Konohagakure, but he can repair these injuries, and then we can fight them 2-on-2. Guki-sama will understand, and the human path should be able to lead that army. But before he could enact his desperate plan, Naruto and Kakashi's radios both crackled to life. All three ninjas paused, the leaf warriors in surprise, and Yahiko's body so he didn't miss what was being said. Is anyone listening? Naruto's eyes narrowed in worry and shock, as he recognized the voice of the ninja squirrel Soul, his beloved's favored familiar. I know I shouldn't be doing this, the female rodent continued, but Hinata Dono was ambushed by Madara Uchiha inside the Raikage's castle, and she's in a bad way. If Naruto Dono or anyone else can hear this, please help. The clamor from the device ended, and Naruto stared at his squad leader in desperation. Hinata's hopes were almost immediately dashed upon entering the Raikage's stronghold. Even after passing through the layer of Fuinjutsu that blocked her Kekkei Genkai from the outside, she could still only see the first floor of the four-story structure, and she could not even see all of that. What she could see was 3 teams of Shizokus along the outer wall of the building, and a large, 2-level room in the center of the building. Most of the first-floor rooms that her silver eyes could not penetrate into were on the far side of the fort, and she quickly plotted the fastest and safest route. As she moved carefully through the building, Hinata noticed one of the blank spots in her Byakugan seemed to be following her. She could not be certain, partly because the Shozaku's form was so indistinct, but also because the Shozaku appeared to be avoiding his comrades. The Leaf Tokujo would have expected the foot soldier to raise the alarm and make contact with the other anonymous warriors, if he was tracking her. Since he was dodging the other Shizokus, she wondering if he disobeying orders in some fashion. In that case he might have been on the same course as her simply because it was the best way to stay undetected. She checked the first 2 rooms without incident. However her unease grew, as her shadow remained the same distance behind her. The Hyuga heiress decided to put the Shozaku to the test. She turned back, to where she had seen a staircase. She darted up to the 2nd floor, and found her ability to see down to the 1st floor with her Byakugan was immediately blocked. There were more sealed areas on the 2nd level than there were on the 1st, but she could still see into just under half of the rooms. And there were also fewer Shizokus, at least in the sections that were not protected from her enhanced vision. But instead of continuing her search in earnest, she looked in the closest blocked room. Finding an empty bedroom, she ducked inside. As she expected, the Fuinjutsu only blocked detection from the outside, so her metallic eyes could gaze through the wall. She settled down, intently watching the stairs. She waited anxiously for 5 minutes, though that turned to a mild impatience as the next 5 minutes drew hour. Hinata was just about to admit that he had not been tracking her, when a blank spot emerged from the lower level. The young woman still could not make out the specifics of his height or build, however he definitely had the same gait. Beyond just the way he moved, her instincts told her that this was the same individual. She waited until his back was to her, or so she thought, and slid the door open a fraction. She frowned at what she saw. Though the warrior was facing away from her as she hoped, his unfamiliar black variant of the Shizoku's uniform gave her pause. Hinata only waited for a second, knowing he might turn at any time. She pushed the door the rest of the way open with a careful balance of speed and silence. Then she darted forward, rapidly striking his hips and shoulders, hoping to disable the tenketsu leading to his arms and legs. She grabbed his shoulder with her right hand and placed her left palm over the spot on his back roughly corresponding to his heart. Why are you following me? She asked sternly. Why haven't you raised an alarm? How did you know I was there? He queried calmly, seemingly unconcerned by her initial strikes, or by her current, potentially lethal position. These uniforms should block your Byakugan. You should not have been able to see me. You Fuinjutsu aren't as good as you think, she said firmly. But inside Hinata felt a sliver of uncertainty, as she thought she recognized the Shozoku's voice. Or perhaps that is the point, he decided. You can't see through these clothes, but you can see everything around them. After all, if you could see me, you would probably have tried to K me outright, instead of trying to question me. Her anxiety rose, and Hinata chose to take him at his word. She pressed her threatening hand more deeply into his clothing, and intoned, 8 trigrams, assassin's palm. Even as she started forming the chakra threads that would perforate his cardiac muscle and seal the tenketsu around it, the black Shozoku went limp. Her training told her to duck even before her eyes saw him, and she dove under the red chakra spear that stabbed where her head had been. She spun as she dropped, trying to sweep his legs as she turned to face him. He hopped backwards to avoid her. For the first time in her life, Hinata refused to believe what her Kekkei Genkai told her. But once her physical eyes landed on him, she could no longer maintain her hopeful doubts. Madara, Hinata struggled to keep the fear from her voice, as she saw the Shanin Sharingan glowing in Toa's eye sockets. The chakra tattoo weapon retracted, and the first Uchiha smiled at her with unsettling serenity. That is awfully forward of you, Grand Niece, addressing me by my given name without any sort of honorific, he told her, but his voice contained no recrimination. Are those really the manners of the next leader of the Hyuga clan? You have no honor, she explained darkly, edging back slightly. Why would I address you as if you did? Madara's gentle smile turned into an amused smirk, but the red swirls in his black eyes flashed. He took a step closer, not letting her escape, yet his posture remained calm. I suppose I have not answered your questions yet, he pretended to remember. I did not alert my creations because I do not need them, and do not want them to interfere. And I followed you because I was hoping to have some time alone with my beloved sister's great-granddaughter. Hinata dropped into the gentle fist stance, her legs tensing, though she was not sure yet if she would charge or run. Now, dear niece, Madara admonished her, if we start in the hallway, we are certain to attract the attention of Namikaze's cannon fodder. And I believe we would both rather avoid that. There is a modest dojo on this floor, one with reinforced and soundproof walls. I would suggest we go there for this family reunion. Hinata's eyes narrowed as she considered him. Now that the stealth uniform was gone, she could see all of Toa's body. She could see the unique chakra-bonded tattoos on his right arm. She also noticed that the tenketsu she had attempted to close were now open, but she could not say if she had missed due to the Shozoku's interference, or if Madara had removed the Byakugan's blocks. And she was not surprised to find that in addition to the usual chakra reservoir in the area between his stomach and heart, there were extra concentrations of energy in his eyes. However, what she was really looking for were signs of deception, and despite his oddly polite facade, she could not see any dishonesty. Hinata was not foolish enough to think her eyes were infallible, especially against the immortal who had trained to fight them. But she decided to trust her skill, to a degree. Besides, she reasoned, Conan said that Madara wants to K me personally, and if the Shizoku or Guki get involved, he could lose this chance. Lead the way, she gestured, allowing her body to relax while her focus remained sharp. He nodded magnanimously, and walked past her, his defenses seemingly down. The Hyuga heiress did not take the bait, and trailed him just out of arm's reach. You're Toby, she suddenly realized, you're playing the part of Toby again. Toby was fun, partly because of how much Conan was annoyed by him. He half turned to smile at her openly, just like you are now. But it was also nice not to have everyone around me either cringe or bluster and pretend they weren't afraid. Since I started working for Guki, I haven't had a time or a reason to put on that mask again. So I thought I would show it to you. Sorry if it makes you uncomfortable. Hinata contained her frown. Even though she knew Madara did not regret his actions or their effect on her, she could not see anything other than sincerity in his apology. She began to wonder if he was actually taking her to a private sparring room, or somewhere else. The pale beauty also doubted she could escape him now, not without alerting the guards and making the whole mission that much more difficult. And that was if she could get away at all. She decided to keep following him for the time being, but her mind was already considering other plans. Her worries were unfounded, at least in this instance. Madara led her to a larger room, entered first, and generously allowed her to have a look at the dojo. The space had a thick padding on the floor, walls, and ceiling, soft enough to lessen the impact of falls and throws, yet firm enough to not impede movement. There were a few weapons racks mounted on the walls, filled with practice replicas made from bamboo or foam-covered wood. Unlike the bedroom where she had waited for Madara, this room blocked her Byakugan for leaving as well as from entering, but that Fuinjutsu was in the outermost strata of the walls, which were comprised of multiple layers of wooden, metal, and chakra. As Uchiha had told her, no sound would be escaping the dojo, and the reinforced structure would be able to take all but the strongest ninjutsu. Hinata doubted her Rasengan or 8 trigrams empty palm would even put a dent in the walls, though she expected an Odama Raten Rasengan would overwhelm the armor. Hinata closed the door behind her, and Madara turned to face her, his expression changing. Hatred emitted from his eyes, strong enough that it was nearly a physical force. His stance did not change, yet any sense that his posture was casual and open evaporated. The Hyuga heiress fell into the gentle fist stance again, wondering if she had made a mistake. I have been waiting almost 80 years, his stolen voice was eerily deep. I was going to destroy my sister Hoshi's mind, merge her Byakugan with my Sharingan, and take my rightful place as leader of the Hyuga clan. But her eyes, those accursed silver eyes, they turned my power against me, and nearly destroyed me. That is the only reason Hashirama Senju was able to defeat me, to force me to fake my own death and flee the Hidden Leaf village. But today, I will crush the Suijin Byakugan, and prove that I am better than the clan that abandoned me like garbage. As his rant ended, Madara surprised Hinata by breaking the fundamental tenet of the Uchiha fighting style. Rather than wait for her to initiate, he jumped forward, the tattoos flowing off his right arm, forming giant claws over his hands. The pale beauty caught the red blades on Ginmaki, and used the force to slide backwards, avoiding Madara's follow-up kick. His right hand followed her, and her braces stopped the attack again. This time she countered with a gentle fist tap aimed at the shadowed remnant of the tattoos on his arm. Madara spun away from her, unsure if the gentle fist would affect the physical base of his weapons, but unwilling to take the chance. First a spear, now claws, she considered as she blocked another S with her coat. Is there a limit to the number of forms those tattoos can take? I wish that part of Toa's file hadn't been redacted. Madara seemed to notice her focus on his stolen chakra weapons, because the claw on his left hand suddenly shifted into a wakizashi, while the one on his right hand lengthened into a bullwhip. Uchiha snapped the lash towards her neck. Hinata knew he would try to wrap to the whip around her arm when she interposed Ginmaki, and then pull her into range of his short blade. So instead she put both braces together, creating a broad enough surface that whip was deflected. I can't stay on the defensive, Hinata told herself, but against an Uchiha. No, the Uchiha, I have to be careful. He can copy almost anything I do, especially if those tattoos can take any shape. That means I can't use my code weapon style, the whipping willows, or the tiger and heron. And most of my ninjutsu are also going to be off limits. But he can't steal my Byakugan techniques, and while he can copy the movements of the gentle fist, without my family's bloodline, it becomes ineffective as a combat style. And if Kakashi-sensei and Naruto are right, the Sharingan can't copy the Rasengan, either. So those attacks will have to be my arsenal. The Hyuga heiress's eyes continued to track the tattoo weapons, as she blocked and dodged Madara's attacks, waiting for an opening. The reason for her focus had changed, but the Sharingan user either did not recognize that or just did not care. They are quite useful, Madara stated smugly, as he changed the whip into a pike, stabbing at her without concern for the fact that a real version of the polearm would have been too unbalanced to wield with one hand. Ginmaki pushed the extended spear away, and Hinata spun closer, aiming her glowing fingers for his wrist. His offhand sword darted towards her forearm, and Naruto's lover was forced to abort her attack. They are physically solid, but seem to resist normal damage, she noted, ducking past a horizontal sweep of the pike. At first I was quite furious that you and Naruto prevented me from entering Hanabi's body, and that I was forced to take this Anbu agent's body instead, he taunted her, but once I realized how well these weapons complement my Sharingan, I began to think it was for the better. Besides, having a fully trained, adult, male body is better than that of a female child. Rasengan, she intoned angrily in response, Minato's jutsu into the pike as it flashed towards her heart. The spinning technique did what the earth chakra enhanced impacts with her braces had not. The flesh bonded, chakra altered ink construct shattered. The front half of the polearm fell to the floor, flaking away. Madara looked at the splintered end of the weapon in shock, but then shrugged, unconcerned. He retracted the weapons, and as the tattoo reformed on his arm, Hinata noticed that the lower ring was now jagged and incomplete. Well played, but a temporary win, he informed her, even if my weapons are damaged, they are self-repairing in their sealed form. My tattoo should be back to normal in at most 2 days, and then I can resume using them normally. But for now, you are limited to hand, she raced forward, her chakra-wrapped digits aimed for his neck and heart, but instead of avoiding her left hand, he lifted his right palm to intercept it. Hinata stopped just short of hitting it, the oddly swirling chakra in his forearm tenketsu triggering something she remembered from a discussion with her cousin Neji. You know the ringing palm, don't you? She asked as she leaned back to avoid his follow-up punch. Not precisely, he admitted, but I have always been looking for methods of overcoming the Hyuga's techniques. So after I heard how the leader of the Suzahira clan defeated and humiliated Hoshi's son, I made it a point to observe them. Though I was not able to learn the true ringing palm, I was able to create a close approximation. How close? Hinata wondered silently, as her fingers lashed out again. Again he evaded the attack on his left side, while attempting to get her left hand to strike his right palm. It looks like he can only use it with his right hand, she concluded dubiously, unless that's an intentional trick. But the main issue is, will his defense damage my fingers as the true ringing palm did to Neji, or will it just stop my gentle fist attack? Kaiten, fire clone jutsu, Madara intoned while fully ducking her next set of strikes. Two apparently normal copies of Uchiha split off, and started to move to surround Hinata. Rotation, she incanted in retaliation, throwing the duplicates into the walls where they exploded in matched bursts of intense heat and flame. Unfortunately, the real Uchiha was just out of range of the repelling dome. Madara exhaled in annoyance, and hopped forward, thrusting his right palm at her forehead. Hinata dropped under the attack, letting it sail over her. At the same time, her arms both darted upwards. Her right index and middle fingers dug into Madara's elbow, while the matching digits on her left hand landed 1 inch back from his wrist. From her crouching position, she somersaulted past Madara, shutting off 2 tenketsu in the left side of his torso as she passed. And before he could turn, her gentle fist struck again. Hinata surveyed him hopefully as he faced her again. 3 of the tenketsu she closed in his torso were vital, and the attack on his arm had ended his ringing palm copy. His ability to use jutsu should be limited now, she told her with no small amount of relief, and without that blocking jutsu, I should be able to shut down his chakra. Chakra pulse, he exclaimed, violently derailing her train of thought. Her eyes widened in surprise and fear as his energy blasted through his spiritual network, removing the blocking effect of her attacks, leaving him with only the minor physical damage. He smirked at her expression. You might be wondering how I learned your technique, he answered the unspoken question in her silver eyes, but I didn't. You and Naruto recreated a jutsu that I devised decades ago. Of course, I called it explosive opening, but since your name for it has become somewhat infamous, I decided to adopt it. He has spent his whole life creating and stealing techniques to use against the Byakugan, she realized, recalling her father's description of his fight with the first Uchiha. None of the well-known jutsu of the Hyuga clan will work against him. But some of the newer or hidden variations might still be effective. Madara closed the gap between them, again trying to tag Hinata with his open right hand. The young woman decided to test her theory, and began to rotate before he could touch her. 8 trigrams palms, heavenly spin, she stated strongly, using the full incantation to empower the hemisphere around her. Madara placed his hand against the dome, and instead of being thrown away, he dug in his heels to avoid being pushed back and the heavenly spin distorted away from him. In the midst of the barrier, Hinata shifted her stance slightly, and inverted the flow of her chakra. 8 trigrams palms, infernal whirlpool. The energy sphere turned from blue to red, and began to suck Madara inwards. His pirated jutsu did nothing to impede her technique, and his eyes narrowed in annoyance as he circled the boundary, being drawn unevenly closer to Hinata. The pale beauty dropped her right hand, her fingers slightly curled, and chakra began to spin above her palm. Rasengan. She shouted once Madara was in range, thrusting Minato's jutsu at the traitor. The immortal raised his right hand to block, but the Rasengan destroyed his copy technique, and then skidded along the inside of his arm until to hit his chest. The Rasengan tore into his flesh, even as the infernal whirlpool pulled him into the deadly orb. Finally the Hyuga clan leader's hidden technique ended, Hinata's focus directed to the spiraling sphere. Then that jutsu also ended, but it did so with an explosion, throwing Madara into the padded wall of the dojo. Hinata's shoulders dipped slightly as she panted from the effort of using the two techniques in concert. She took a food pill to restore her chakra, even as Madara drunkenly stood. The skin on his palm and all down his right arm was shredded. His shirt was destroyed, and the flesh and muscle of the right upper quadrant of his torso had been flayed to the bone. The injuries were not necessarily fatal, but would have incapacitated most ninjas. But there was only hatred in his eyes as he literally stared death at her. Amaterasu. Black flames flickered around the edges of his orbs, and then shot towards her with an unholy roar. Please be right, Itachi-san, she begged mentally, as she threw her arms outward, expelling most of the chakra left in her body as she desperately cried out, 8 trigrams palms, holy cyclone. Hinata disappeared behind the opaque purple dome, and the shadow inferno cascaded over the bubble. Madara's ogi burned away even the chakra of the holy cyclone, but the technique was constantly renewed under it. And since the Uchiha Jutsu could only burn what the user could see, it passed no further. Inside the dome, Hinata felt no heat, and it was only thanks to her Byakugan that she could see Madara's wrath increasing. She also watched the walls of the dojo behind her being slowly consumed by the black flames. Uchiha scared bitterly as he ended the Amaterasu. Hinata waited another half second, and then dropped her holy cyclone. Her chakra was exhausted, but the food pill started to kick in, slowly replenishing her energy. His eyes continued to study her, livid yet also more thoughtful. So, even at the Chunin level, my Sharingan is worthless against you, he said as much to himself as to his opponent. You refuse to use jutsu I can copy, you are immune to my Tsukuyomi and Susanoo, and you know the secret limitation of Amaterasu, probably from Itachi. I'm guessing Kakashi will have also taught you some way to counter or avoid Kamui. And neither Izanagi nor Izanami will help in this situation. I guess I will just have to KO you as if I were a common jonin, he shrugged in mock defeat, but first. Susuri. The substantial damage from her Rasengan flowed gruesomely across his body, neck, and face, vanishing into his whirlpool eyes, leaving him unharmed. As he healed himself, Hinata bit down on a second food pill and started signing. Raiten, lighting cannon jutsu, he announced without crafting hand seals, as Susuri completed. Hinata was forced to cancel her technique, as she shifted Ginmaki to block the 8-inch sphere, sending earth and water chakra into the coat to reinforce them. The cannon shot was deflected into the ceiling, but Madara followed close behind it, down with a katana shaped from Toa's undamaged tattoo. After a brief exchange of melee combat, Hinata had only scored one good gentle fist hit, though it was to Madara. She was too busy fending off his attacks. Uchiha was pouring chakra into his muscles to match her speed and overpowering her in strength. On top of that, the Crimson Blade gave him the advantage in reach. Hinata had managed to avoid any truly damaging hits. She was waiting for her chakra to recover, but even with 2 food pills her energy was not growing fast enough. She dared not waste it to increase her own physical abilities. And with each injury he inflicted, Madara's mood lightened. You know, it's too bad that you encountered me, the Uchiha founder said conspiratorially, shifting once again to Tobi's kind tones. If it had been any other member of your team, I probably would have ignored them, or even told them where to find Guki. Summoning Jutsu. Madara smirked in amusement as Sol and Lune appeared before their contractor. The squirrels darted around to stand beside Hinata, but the albino rodent could not suppress a squeak of fear when she saw their opponent. You need us to help you take this guy down. Lune bluffed. No, you have your orders. Hinata shook her head. Hinata joined Kakashi even as he banished his ninja hounds back to their kennel. You wanted to see me, sensei? She asked, once he turned his attention to her. Yes. Thanks for coming, Hinata. What can I do for you? She prompted immediately. Would you summon Sol and Lune, please? He requested. Quote, tomorrow, we might need more eyes and ears to find Nagato, he explained. I want to prepare your friends in advance, just like I did mine. He showed her the picture of Nagato that had been copied from Conan's photo album. I want to make sure Sol and Lune know our plans and are familiar with Nagato's appearance. So that way, if you think they can help you find Nagato, and won't jeopardize operational security, you can call them and they will know what to do with you needing to explain further. What about Naruto and his toads? She asked, gathering her chakra into the B on her digits. Kakashi considered that for a moment, and then slowly shook his head. Given who Naruto is likely to end up summoning, and the person doing the summoning, probably not. Hinata smiled slightly as she nodded her understanding. Then she printed her B on the ground and intoned, summoning jutsu. Sol scampered closer, placing her paw comfortingly on the taller human. Are you certain, mistress? The female squirrel asked. Thank you, but yes. Go. The black and white rodents nodded, and raced towards the door. Hinata moved to defend them, but Madara just shook his head. Once the dojo was again sealed, Madara unleashed a weak wind jutsu, which circled around to try to hit Hinata from behind, as he ran forward, stabbing at the teen's heart with his crimson chakra sword. If you want Guki D, why did you work for him in the first place? Hinata asked the question Conan had never been able to adequately explain. She backflipped over the arcs of sharpened air, letting Uchiha deal with his own technique. She dropped into a low crouch as she landed, throwing out her uninjured limb in another leg sweep. Namikaze. Madara seemed to struggle with the question, as he hopped over her knee. Namikaze is excellent with both the carrot and the stick. He used himself and pain as threats to keep me in line. But on the other hand, he taught me an excellent new way to use Susanoo. He helped me acquire a new body. And if he is true to his word, he will return the demon god statue to me once he controls the continent. And the 3, 4, and 5 tails demons still sealed within it. The 7 and 9 tails are D, she stated curiously. There is no way Guki will let you have the 6 tails. And the other 3 are also beyond your reach. For now, he agreed, unconcerned, but the shark and fox will be replaced in time, and Kohaku can't live forever. And I can find the 1, 2, and 8 tails again. The 3 remaining will do, for a start. He swung at her head, and she caught the strike on her left bracha, her right index finger closing in on his left elbow. Do you think Guki will allow you to use the demons as weapons? She recalled the Akatsuki's 2 stated uses for the demons, as fake disasters to manipulate politics, and to power the most destructive tactical jutsu ever conceived. The Beiyu were never meant to be weapons, he grinned confidently, taking the hit to his joint in exchange. That was just a ruse to control the Akatsuki. They were captured for me. You want to be a Jinchuriki? For a few years, he agreed, that should be all it will take for me to subjugate and absorb all 9 of the tailed beasts. Hinata backed off, finally openly frightened. However, it was not his strength that cracked her mental defenses, but his insanity. That's what the statue is for. Madara enjoyed her reaction, and relished the chance to boast about his genius, not just to store the spirits, but see if the 9 of them could be forced into some sort of balance, so that a vessel that could normally only hold 2 or 3 of them might be able to stably contain all 9. You already have a bloodline trait, she protested. And it's not enough, he countered, even with the powers of a mime, a siren, and an ifrit, and the unique abilities that arose from combining them, my Sharingan is still not sufficiently stronger than any other Kekkei Genkai. But imagine, he continued with a touch of deranged wonder, innate control of the 5 elements, almost without the need for chakra. Instant shapeshifting. Unmatched regeneration. and a functionally infinite chakra supply to do anything the innate powers of the Bayu cannot. Combined with the immortality I already possess, I would be more than a human, more than a ninja. I would be a god. His head dropped from gazing at the ceiling, but you will not live long enough to witness my ascension, grandniece. Kaiten, grasping Blaze Jutsu. Madara's left hand was surrounded by talons of flame, almost as large as he was tall. He flexed the artificial hand once, and seemed pleased with the result. Hinata braced herself and started mentally preparing a jutsu, and Madara charged her again, katana and flame claw both swinging. After the ninja squirrels exited the dojo, they split up as instructed. But while Lune loped away to search, Sol found a sheltered corner. She reached into her sash, and took out the radio she had stolen from Hinata. She knew her actions were highly illegal, due to the potential threat the communicator posed to both her clan and the humans they had a contract with. And she was disobeying her orders as well. But Sol had also seen the fear in her beloved mistress's face. And she had heard stories about the one with the eyes of the abyss. So after gathering up all of her determination, Sol activated the device. Is anyone listening? The albino squirrel said tentatively into the microphone, I know I shouldn't be doing this. But Hinata Dono was ambushed by Madara Uchiha inside the Raikage's castle, and she's in a bad way. If Naruto Dono or anyone else can hear this, please help. The white rodent crouched down around the radio, hoping desperately for a response. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.